Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Tony. A new study says men who do less exercise have higher libidos.
I'm Tony Kornheiser, and that's why I stopped CrossFit.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever done CrossFit?
No.
Okay. CrossFit is a series of complicated exercises with no let-up whatsoever. You roll tires over, you pick up barbells, you do all these things.
So you've done this. You sound like you've done it.
No, but I have heard that Tony Reale did it and could not move his neck for 6 months.
Then we're in trouble.
Could not do it.
If Reale couldn't do it,
right. Reale is the
shot.
fittest human being we have ever met.
Been in this building.
Could not move his neck for 6 months. May as well have been in the cast. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Coach K's loss, Rick Pitino's anger, and Mitch Trubisky's height. But we begin today with the very small waves washing ashore on NBA trade deadline day. Despite all the hysterical hoo-ha about who would get traded, the following people did not move an inch. Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, Jimmy Butler, Derrick Rose, Ricky Rubio, and the Nets' likely number 1 overall draft pick. But don't worry, because Nerlens Noel, Cameron Payne, Mike Scott, Taj Gibson, Joffrey Laverne, and Roy Hibbert, your boy, are all potential saviors on new teams. Wilbon, which team will regret not acting the most?
There's only 2 teams you could even put into this sentence and make a conversation work. And that would be the Indiana Pacers if they can't sign Paul George and then lose their star.
That's right.
I fear being able to replace him.
That's right.
I'm going reverse order. And the number 1 team that could regret this if they get into, say, they lose a 6-game series or 5-game series in the conference finals to the Cleveland Cavaliers, that would be the Boston Celtics. Because then they would sit there and go, oh, my God, suppose we'd made this move. Suppose we could have played this series with Paul George.
Right. That's right.
So to me, it's the Celtics. And I understand, Tony, why you might not do it if you think that the other team is trying to hold you up for too much. Larry Bird, Danny Ainge, how about that? But it seems like the Celtics could have moved now and made a big impact, and they didn't.
I think the biggest winners, and I'm sure you will agree with me, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Golden State Warriors.
Right, because their rivals didn't get any better.
Nobody challenges them.
That's right.
And I will give you the other biggest winner, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Because Paul George stayed and therefore now looks to the Pacific Ocean.
And it would not surprise me and it would not surprise you if starting on the Los Angeles Lakers within a year and a half are Russell Westbrook and Paul George.
2 years.
I mean, I think that they are big winners because nobody else made a move to vault. The biggest move in the last week is Boogie Cousins.
Yes.
Right? So,
and they're just trying to get to the 8th spot.
Yeah, which is useless.
You know what becomes disappointing? People say, oh, there's going to be moves. And what do I say every year? No, there's not. Because general managers, executives get conservative. They look at what they have and they overrate that. And even as they cast their eyes and begin to covet others, they go, oh, I don't want to give up what I got here because we may move backward.
I just want to mention one move.
What?
The 76ers get rid of Nerlens Noel, who I believe at the moment weighs 145 pounds.
Yeah.
It's another big man and a high draft pick they get rid of. They're going to get rid of Okafor at some point because they've soured on him. Do you know, I was told this, I hope this is true, the 76ers are the longest tenured 76er right now.
Who?
Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid.
What's he played, 40 games, if that?
Yeah.
People who haven't followed college basketball closely over the past 30 years might naively call Syracuse's buzzer-beating win last night over Duke, easy for me to say, an upset. What it was an exhilarating home court triumph that keeps alive Syracuse's hopes for an at-large bid despite a slow start, despite an RPI of 75 and a non-conference strength of schedule rank of 194. The question is whether you,
look at that
Tony,
shot. Thank you, baby.
Like all the breathless bracketology dopes on every channel in America, think that bank shot absolutely put Syracuse in the tournament.
100%. 100%.
Don't be like the rest of those dopes.
And I'm not.
It was a great shot.
It was a great and dramatic shot, sunk by a kid, John Gillen, who earlier in the season, a couple of weeks ago, had 42, I think, against North Carolina
42.
State. And he's a person that people want to see in the tournament. Now, let me tell you why that puts them in. That is their 3rd win over a top 10 team at the time this year. Florida State, UVA, and Duke were in the top 10. I don't know how many other people get to do that.
Home, by the way.
Sure, because they're terrible on the road. And I know they can't play the NCAAs at home, but the worst they can do in the ACC, which is by far the best tournament, by far the best conference this year, the worst they can do is 9-9.
If they lose their last 2 games.
They're in.
You know, you always got this they're in thing. Except when I look at
By
the way, Jim Boeheim said last night they needed to win that game to not be eliminated. And I agree with him.
Okay.
That just doesn't eliminate you. It doesn't put you in.
I think it does.
When your rank of your non-conference schedule's 194, the committee has these numbers, Tony. They look at them.
Stop for a second. Jim Boeheim is not being kept out of this tournament. He won his 1,000th game a couple of weeks ago, and he'll never get credit for it because the NCAA took away 101 victories. He just sat on a bench for 3 Olympics with Mike Krzyzewski. They're putting him in. Okay. That team is going in. And Gillen and Tyler Lydon, they're good players. That team could get to the Sweet 16. They're in.
3 consecutive games, meaning last 2 ACC, first one of the conference tournament. I worry that our friend Jim Boeheim won't get in. I hope he's in because I'm sitting there last night rooting for him.
You're sitting here and you're projecting about Northwestern because that could happen to them.
I'm projecting about everybody.
Syracuse is in.
Oh,
By
really?
the way, can I ask you a question?
What?
You look like you're going to Palm Beach tonight.
You got a problem with me going to Palm
You got
Beach?
the pink. What do you look?
Plain weight.
You're modeling the old Johnny Carson line at Palm Beach Sport Jacket.
25th anniversary.
In other ACC action last night, at halftime of the North Carolina-Louisville game in Chapel Hill, an adult fan yelled something derogatory at Louisville coach Rick Pitino. Pitino wheeled and yelled back and had to be restrained by his assistants. After the game reviewing the incident, Pitino said, quote, "I take it from the students all the time. You expect it from the students. But from an adult, and then to turn his back on me like he's a coward? I've always said this is the classiest place in college basketball until I met a fan on the way out," unquote. Wilbon, are you surprised Pitino took the bait?
Yeah, I am. I've been in places when Rick Pitino was a young coach where a lot worse was said about him. If what we heard reported is what was said, no, seriously. And by the way, I've probably been to more games in North Carolina than Pitino, who wasn't in the ACC for very long. I agree with him about Chapel Hill. I think there are fewer incidents like this in Chapel Hill than most places I've been, even in the ACC. And this was nothing. So, yes, I am surprised that Rick Pitino, who has walked out of tough places in his life as the opposing coach, like Madison Square Garden, this is the worst he's heard, and he took the bait.
I have to say, and I will quote this accurately according to the reports, that the fan turned and said, "Pitino, you suck." That doesn't strike me alone. That doesn't strike me alone as anything that Pitino hasn't heard
1,000
20,000
times. And worse.
But, you know, it's hard to know what's
Sets
your
you
trigger
off.
point. It's hard to know. Like, let's review Pitino's last few years. Okay, there was his own personal scandal. There was the prostitution scandal allegedly created by one of his assistants. There's the daily weight of coaching in Louisville when everybody in Kentucky says, well, you used to coach here. What are you doing in Louisville? There's, well, you don't know. You don't know what sets somebody off.
I know something could set me off any moment. I get that. But Rick Pitino, Rick has kept his cool for decades through worse. I have walked through tunnels with Rick Pitino when worse has been said.
He's got
I've heard it.
Top 10 ranked team, and his son is doing very well.
His son threw a beat down on Maryland last night, didn't he? Pretty good for Pitino's right now. Good for them. Let's stay in Chapel Hill to talk about the football team's point guard, quarterback Mitch Trubisky. There's angst out there over Trubisky's height. Please. Program height, 6'3", Tone. Mike Mayock of the NFL Network says he'll measure out at 6'1". The kid's coach, Larry Fedora, says it'll wind up right in the middle, about 6'2". Tony, so much is made of everything involving these draftees, most of all quarterbacks projected to go in the first round. Do you think his height is that big a deal going into the draft?
Let me tell you where height matters. At Disney World, when they say you got to be this big to get on this ride. This is vanity. Everybody wants to be big. Quarterbacks want to be big. They want to be able to be in command. They want to survey the field like a general. But if I told you could have Drew Brees' career, if I told you could have Russell Wilson's career, you would win a Super Bowl. You'd take that.
Yeah.
You'd take that.
If he has what they have otherwise.
This is one of the tyrannical parts of the combine where everything is measured and judgments are made on some absolute factor and not someone's heart.
Well, thanks for coming over my side on the combine, which is
that doesn't mean I don't like the
combine. Is about to curse us over the coming
I think
days and weeks. I could think of quarterbacks, Tony, who don't have the athleticism and the ability to move around in the pocket and throw on the run, like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, say Rex Grossman, who got passes batted down game after game, year after year, his whole career. Yeah. And at 6'1", and this is, there's a point. I don't know what the tipping point is. Fran Tarkenton was about that height. Yeah. You know, he could move around, and he didn't get passes bad around Theismann. Great call there. Yeah. But Tony, it may be that the difference between 6'1" and 6'3" for him. Now, he seems, in what little tape I've seen of him, to move around fairly well. Maybe he can prevent passes from being batted, but it could matter.
Aaron Rodgers, who we think is a great quarterback and we know is going to the Hall of Fame, seemed to be sensitive in a 60 Minutes piece.
Somebody said he was 6'1".
Yeah, 6'1" or 6'2" or something like that, and he was sensitive about his height. But the way he moves, it doesn't really matter. I mean, there are such things as program heights. I mean, I think we would both agree that Charles Barkley was shorter and fatter than he was ever listed and better by miles. So what's the difference?
Combine! Combine!
We're now going to show you footage from a professional tennis tournament in Delray Beach, Florida. Concentrate on the near court where Bernard Tomic, the 31st ranked player in the world, makes minimal attempts to win points on the way to losing this match. Pertinent information about Tomic includes his nickname, Tomic the Tank Engine, and the fact that Tomic's dear friend is behavioral nightmare Nick Kyrgios. Wilbon, does this guy meet the standards of a professional tennis player?
That looks like our number 3 of Don and me in the 1970s when we were teenagers, playing each other and cursing each other out, and you're so tired because you played in the sun, and that's all you can do.
This is about 40 minutes in.
40 minutes in a pro.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what needs to happen. Particularly as Federer gets older and Nadal gets older and you're trying to identify great male players as your sport
well, it wouldn't be this
sort
guy.
of teeters. No, here's what has to happen. Him and his boy, the other tanking fool,
Kyrgios.
You have to suspend them.
Yeah.
Make them sue you. You have
Kyrgios
to say to
suspended.
everybody, no. I don't mean for a week or...
Right.
No. What Maria Sharapova was initially given like 6 months for is nothing of a threat to the sport like this garbage. They need to throw these people out on indefinite suspension. Make them sue you, but you can't have them out there representing your sport.
If I ran the tournament, I would withhold all of his money.
Of course.
Yeah, I would do that. And then I would go to the ATP and I would say, how can you put this clown out there? I mean, there are people paying real money here to see real tennis. You can't put this guy out here. You have to suspend him. I agree completely with this. And what I wonder about, maybe it's just coincidence, I think he and Kyrgios are both Australian, and I think we always remember Rod Laver and John Newcomb and people like that.
And go, how did this happen? Country or culture or ethnicity. I equate them to cheating the sport and cheating the patrons. And if tennis has a living, breathing head of it, I won't use the word commissioner, then they need to throw these bums out.
Unless he's hurt.
They behave
if he's hurt,
on the court like bums, not professional.
If he's hurt, that would be different. But
Tony,
you can't behave like this. It's why people look at tennis.
We see injured guys give better effort than that all the time.
Let's take a break. Coming up, will Boogie Cousins and Anthony Davis team up to beat the Rockets tonight?
And could Villanova's loss cost them a 1 seed? Fortune tellers next? We're going to get fortune teller in here?
Billy, you went into the closet for things out of April. You did. It's February.
Palm Beach. You guessed it.
And welcome back to the PTI Psychic Hotline, where we peer into the future to bring you answers from the great beyond. I sense the first call.
Hey, Mike and Tony, this is Kitty. Do you see last night's Villanova loss costing them the number 1 seed in the tourney?
Didn't cost them the number 1 overall seed. They were never going to get that. Gonzaga is going to get the number 1 seed. Villanova is going to get a number 1 seed. They are locked in. The only 2 teams in the country with fewer losses than Villanova are Gonzaga and Kansas. And Villanova's the defending national champion. Mike, I believe that if Villanova loses in the first round of the Big East tournament, they're still going to get a number 1 seed.
I believe if they win out, they will get the number 1 seed because they are the defending champion, Tony. Look, losses to Butler, Marquette by 2, and Butler again. Butler's a ranked team and a conference team. I don't see that costing Villanova much anything. Look, I got Carolina, Villanova, Gonzaga, Kansas as being the number 1.
So you don't have a Pac-12 team.
But remember, I don't have a Pac-12 team as of now. It's fluid.
UCLA or Oregon.
But Tony, I believe Gonzaga is going to defeat it, and still the committee could look at their strength of schedule and say, no. We're going to give you a number 1, but we're giving Villanova the number 1. It could happen.
Next.
Hey, fellas, do you see the Warriors beating the Clippers tonight for the 10th straight time?
The game's in Oakland. The last time they played there, it was a 46-point game. Chris Paul's not supposed to come back, but even if he comes back, you think he's going to score 47? No. This is the first game back for the Warriors since the All-Star break. So if they were to lose this game, people would talk about it. They're not going to lose this game. They win the game.
Yes, the Clippers. sometimes you really can catch a pro team in certain circumstances napping because the seasons are interminable. Guys get up, they get down. This is not that. They hate the Clippers. They want to. They don't just want to beat them. They want to humiliate them.
Yeah.
And so, no, there's no chance really of the Clippers, particularly in Oakland, in Oracle.
That's what I'm thinking.
Winning this game.
That's what I'm thinking.
And because it's the first game back, they're rested. They'd have to sleepwalk through it literally to lose this game. If Chris Paul was back in midseason form, that might suggest something else, but not yet. Chris is not back yet.
46 the last game. 46. Next.
Hey, Tony and Mike. This is Chris from Indiana. You see the Pelicans beating the Rockets tonight in Boogie Cousins' debut?
This is a little cloudy to me. I mean, Boogie Cousins has never played 1 minute with Anthony Davis. And his entire professional career, Boogie Cousins has not played with anybody as good as Anthony Davis. So I think it's going to take them a while to just figure out spacing on the floor and where they stand and how they accommodate one another. And, by the way, Houston is not only a good team. Houston has 17 more victories than New Orleans at this point. So I think if there was a prop bet that I would take, it would be the bet that Boogie Cousins would have 0 technicals tonight because in a new city, he would want to show his best behavior.
Yeah, I think Houston, even without Sweet Lou Williams, who I don't think is going to play tonight, and trade bringing him in from the Lakers, Houston's got incentive, too. You talk about Golden State. Houston believes it can finish in that top 4 and get a crack at Golden State, which they got a couple of years ago. So, no, and those guys, Tony, for everything you said, they got to figure out how to play. That takes games, weeks. Not going to happen tonight.
Next.
Hi, this is Jimmy from Berkeley, California. Are the Cubs ever going to welcome Sammy Sosa back into the fold?
Look, ever is a long time. I understand they're down on him now. In a recent interview when he was asked about the travails of his PED questioning, he compared himself to Jesus. That doesn't work for a lot of people. He also had 60 home runs plus 3 different years. And I think I'll defer to you, but he was beloved when he was in Chicago. Yes, I imagine he will come back. I envision him coming back and being cheered at some point.
But, Tony, never, even in the midst of those 360 home run season when he hit 193 in those 3 years.
It's a lot.
Never was he accorded the status of Banks and Sano and Williams and Jenkins. Never. And I think about my own sort of treatment of that group of people. Those guys are deities. And Sammy was great during that time. He was entertaining. No one was ever offended by it.
Think he'll never be welcomed
Tony,
back?
What I wonder is, I hope he'll be welcomed back at some point. Not now. Is it the unpardonable sin, what he did? Is it unforgivable? That's the question.
No.
Shouldn't
Those
be.
home runs.
Shouldn't
We're
be.
nearly out of premonitions, but in our future, I sense that we will discuss Charles Oakley attending tonight's Knicks game in Cleveland.
And I see us talking about Dylan Brooks's latest heroics.
It's the corked bat when the evidence was all over the field. And Dusty said, show me the evidence. And we said, walk in the infield.
Not there.
It's all over.
I don't care.
There is more to me, Queen Eliara of Elfgard, than my elven magic. Just as there's more to Geico than saving you money, Geico also gives you 24/7 access to licensed agents online, on the phone, or on the Geico app. And while I am a mighty elf queen, I am also a mighty big fan of barbecue potato chips. Minions! More smoky mesquite.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Ahoy there. Trim the jib. It's happy time.
All right,
Happy 21st birthday, D'Angelo Russell. Russell was the number 2 overall pick in the NBA draft 2 years ago. Byron Scott sat him on the bench for the bulk of his rookie year and then got fired. Luke Walton starts him, and he averages 14 points and 5 assists this season. His extracurricular activities include filming teammates in embarrassing circumstances and ending relationships.
These 20 or so games are a major audition for this young man. And let me just say, he needs to impress his new boss.
Happy anniversary, Yoenis Cespedes. Around this day last year, Cespedes kicked off his personal car show at Mets spring training, parading 6 different vehicles in a week's span. Cespedes exercised his 1-year out clause from his 3-year, $75 million deal with the Mets and got a 4-year, $110 million deal from the same team. And that's going to buy a lot of fancy cars.
So the deal making shows good judgment. The cars, they got to be from one of those exotic car rental companies, right?
Sure, absolutely. Happy trails to Cal Berkeley. Though playing at home last night with a 14-point lead at halftime, the Golden Bears were caught and passed with 0.2 seconds left in the game on a 3-pointer by Oregon's Dylan Brooks. This is the same Dylan Brooks who beat UCLA in the last second.
Dylan Brooks pretty good, isn't he? Now, I know you said to me in the earlier segment, you sure you don't want to have a Pac-12 team? And I said, there's time. There's time.
I think you have Arizona, UCLA, and Oregon.
Any one of those three.
I think that's the second best. I think the ACC is the best conference.
But somebody in that top tier, I think, has to lose. Open the door for them, and it could happen easily.
You stay up at night. You watch all that stuff, don't you? We're
running
running out of show. We go to the big finish.
Let's do it.
Charles Oakley plans to attend tonight's Knicks-Cavs game in Cleveland. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it'd be better if I was actually there. Watch the game with Oak. He goes to games in Cleveland all the time.
Does he live in Cleveland?
It's his home.
Okay.
Do dinner at XO afterward? I'm just saying. Chris Bosh signed up to do weekly appearances with TNT. What does that tell you?
It tells me two things. It tells me that he's given up his quest to get back on the court. I think he's done that. It also tells me he's going to be great. He's a really good talker, and someone's going to find room for him as a result of this.
Absolutely.
The White Sox plan to retire Mark Burley's number 56. Is that deserved?
Doesn't Burley have a World Series and a perfect game? If that is the case, yes, he's about the most deserving pitcher in the history of that franchise to have his number retired. Good for Mark Burley. Leicester sacked manager Claudio Ranieri. This guy was the stud last year. Is this justified?
I'm not a soccer guy, but that was the biggest rags to riches story that they won the Premier League in the history of that sport. And less than a year later,
be relegated.
to can this guy.
Huh?
I don't know how you do that. Last one, Gonzaga at San Diego tonight. You smelling upset?
No, I told you, I went against Gonzaga early in the year. I'm not a dope. I'm not doing the game.
Well, you are a dope.
Roll.
Man, that's established truth here.
You're wearing that hat, and I'm a dope.
Trying to do better than next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
Say goodnight to Captain Stubing. I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. Check out the PTI podcast on iTunes.
I'm wearing this hat because you should be wearing this hat because you're going to Palm Beach. See ya.